We're going to table this discussion in Ebola for a second. We're going to bring our guest on board. He's arrived. He's been waiting patiently for the last several minutes, and it's time to bring him on. He is well-known in the Liberty Movement. He used to be a member of the Libertarian Party. He used to hang out with Ernie Hancock, and Will Colley knows him very well, as a matter of fact. It's interesting that this individual and I had some very interesting discussions on the Liberty Movement. I've agreed and disagreed with him on some things, but let's see how this plays out tonight. He is one of the champions of our foreign policy in terms of addressing the Middle East. Here he is. Please welcome Mike Renzulli. Mike, you with us?
Hi, guys. How's it going?
Good. Thank you for joining us, Mike. And I'm glad that you took the time out to join us for the next 30 minutes or so. And we're going to have a very interesting discussion here. And so let's get right to it.
Sure.
First of all, tell us exactly a little bit how you came into the Liberty Movement and how you managed to hook up into the Libertarian Party and got involved with Ernie Hancock and his crew.
Well, thanks for having me on your show, by the way. My journey was actually it actually started in 1994. I probably even started even longer before that. I had moved from New York to Arizona, moving from a very heavily liberal Democrat state to a conservative Republican state, and I came here, and this, coming to Arizona, had opened my eyes to, what at least a somewhat limited government, lower taxes, and at least some semblances of individual freedom can have for people and can do, and how much better states are that do have those, have lower taxes and smaller amounts of government. That was the instantaneous thing for me to switch within about 2 years after moving out here to be a Republican. And then I started delving into ideas. I watched C-SPAN one time, and there was someone on the television who was there was a debate between a liberal public policy analyst and someone from the Cato Institute. And what the person at the Cato Institute was saying resonated very well with me, with my newfound values. So I contacted the Cato Institute and got one of their books, and I ended up on Laissez-Faire Books' mailing list, and I started getting these catalogs, and a lot of the stuff that was in these I found was very, very thought-provoking. So I started reading a lot of libertarian books and literature. And then I became a libertarian, a big L libertarian, in 1998 after having a big disagreement with the internal workings of the Republican Party here. But yeah, that's about essentially what started it. And then in '98, I got heavily involved with the Libertarian Party. And then in 2010, I was a pretty consistent libertarian. I was very outspoken. I was very active in a lot of the circles. And for the last 4 years of my activism in the LP, I was a state and county officer. Then 2010, even probably before that, I started changing my mind after doing some more research on foreign policy, and disagreeing heavily with the libertarian outlook now as I come up with more information related to the goings-on in the Middle East. And also, it has a lot to do with my delving into objectivism. I became an atheist in 2006, and then I decided I wanted to study Ayn Rand's philosophy, and I really, really liked it. And so in 2010, I switched to be a Republican, and I haven't looked back since.
So, you and I had this discussion on the phone about what you see as a problem within the libertarian movement. Yeah. Which is, you've had a falling out with Ernie Hancock. Yeah. Of Freedom's Phoenix. And I don't know what precipitated that. but basically you feel that, there is a contingency of libertarians who are making money off on the foreign policy as well as, a lot of the doctrinaire stuff that they're promoting within the movement. I take it you have issues with antiwar.com.
Yeah, my biggest concern and my biggest disagreement. Look, let me tacitly or try to explain. I don't have a problem with people who subscribe to conspiracy theories. Human beings are very pattern-seeking creatures, and they try to find things. They try to find things of that which they cannot explain. It explains religion, and it also explains conspiracy theory. My biggest thing is that when you knowingly transmit this stuff and make money off of it, you are essentially benefiting off of the fears of others. That is morally wrong. And to disseminate conspiracy theories is a way of trying to remove responsibility from the responsibility or blame, as it should lay to, for the perpetrators of a particular act. A prime example are the 9/11 conspiracy theories that try to lay blame, in some cases, to Jews or onto the U.S. government when the blame clearly lays at the feet of Islam.
Okay. Now, I will have to tell you this, but something, Mike? Even the neocons, even the harshest hawks in the Democratic and Republican parties do the same thing. They make money off the fear, too. The media makes money off the fear, too.
Right.
And something? They make far much more money than libertarians making money off on foreign policy. And very often what you get is Ron Paul usually ending up being the right. I know you think that Ron Paul is an anti-Semite, but I don't think he is. I don't think he is. I think the man is usually on target, and what he has said in 2008 and 2012 pissed off a lot of Republicans in the presidential race, but they also said, you know what, we don't want to hear this because we want to continue being pro-war. We just want to nuke or carpet bomb a lot of the Muslims in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, and Iraq, and what have you. Because, hey, they're out to destroy us, they're out to kill us, and just like Theo Van Gogh, the cartoonist, who was allegedly killed by Islamists, who pissed off a number of Islamists, which may very well be true, which may very well be the case that he did, but you know something? But those were people who were hiding behind Islam, using it as a shield to say, hey, look, we're using our ideology to kill people because of the United States government's actions in the Middle East.
Okay, let me also preface this with my response to that. First of all, I do not hate Muslims. I hate Islam. There's a big difference. Just like I hate Catholicism, but I don't hate Catholics. Okay? The fundamental thing to remember about Islam is that subjugation, as well as also war, is the primary facet of how the religion spreads, and it is also commanded by Allah consistently, and it's reinforced through the doctrines, history, and traditions of that religion. That includes also the Islamic text, but including but not limited to the Quran. All right? Now, in terms of other parties, such as you could also make the case that Christianity is the same. That is true only tacitly, or at least on the surface, because Christianity has a tradition of openly tolerating dissent. It did start off very, very poorly and was very, very violent at the time when it first started out, but it had things about it that did not allow for many of the things you see in Islam now to happen.
That would explain why all the Romans were being crucified and fed to the lions by Christians in the early days of Christianity, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
that was due to paganism. Again, it comes with mixing religion with the state. In that case, the pagans were heavily embedded with the monarchy of Rome. That's why the Christians posed a threat to them, because the Christians were saying to everyone, you are equal, and you are equal, and you are a child of God, no matter who you are. Whereas the pagans had a kind of a kind of a caste system among them, and also at the same time also had slavery. Whereas Christians, even though they later on adopted slavery, were even saying to the slaves, you are a child of God. God loves you.
Boy,
so.
you're deeply programmed.
Oh no, I'm not deeply programmed. I've come to the realization. I've recognized reality for what it is.
Yeah.
Well,
okay, but
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Norm.
And by the way, I was a Christian for over 30 years. My dad was clergy, by the way.
Okay. To make the long story, to make a very short point about this, is that when you mix religion with government, of course it's going to be a theocracy, just like you see in the Middle East. When you mix religion with government, of course it's going to be a theocracy. But you know what's even worse than spiritual religion, which is worse than anything else? How about fascism? And communism and socialism. I mean, we have atheists, Mike, like Hitler and Stalin, who killed more people in the 20th century than any other religious follower combined.
Okay. May I respond to that? Hitler, first of all, was a devout Catholic. And many of his, and a lot of them delved into a lot of Eastern as well as also Nordic mysticism. But the thing is that communism itself was also a religion. If you remember, if you can go online too, you can go. I think it's at the Museum of Communism website. You can see the personality cults. Film footage, and even read about the personality cults of Mao Zedong and Joseph Stalin.
I just want to interject here. This is Mark. I agree with that, and atheism also is a religion.
No, it's not. Atheism is a lack of a belief.
Oh, bullshit.
Yes, it is. Yes, my atheism is the recognition of the reality there are no supernatural or spiritual planes to believe in. I choose reason. Man is the standard of all. Human life is the standard of all.
You now kneel at a different altar. Okay, it's a religion, my friend.
No, it's not. I don't worship anyone. I subscribe to objectivism because I agree with Ayn Rand's philosophy, and I think that she is right in her approach, especially with her ideas.
Which brings
all the truth that there is contained within you. Okay.
Okay. Which brings me to another question here. What is objectivism, and why do you subscribe to the ideas of Ayn Rand? Just so you know, you're talking to a practicing Wiccan here who actually, and I'm very open about it, and I can tell you right now, I don't shove religion down anybody's throat.
Right.
People
And may I clarify something? Because something I did not do is I did not thank you for coming onto the show and entering into this fire. Okay, it takes a lot of courage to come in here and be able to express yourself the way you've done, and you've done it eloquently. And I want to commend you. I know that your heart is good. Okay, I see you, and I appreciate you being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, look, in terms of religion, if people want to believe in a religion, that's fine. Let me give you a preface this for a minute. I took the bus for a number of months here in Phoenix, and I befriended a guy who was from Uzbekistan, and he was Muslim, and he saw that I was reading a book. It was the Truth About Muhammad. It was written by Robert Spencer. And he saw what I was reading, and he started engaging me in a conversation. He said, I really don't subscribe to a lot of those things that the jihadists do, like the Wahhabis and even like the 12 or Shiites. I said, oh, no. I told her, I said, look, we should not lay collective blame on a particular group because of the actions of the ones that are conducting violence, and it's, because it is required or in its name. I told him, I said, you should have the freedom to choose how you want to interpret the religion the way that you want. You should not have to be, because of doing so, should not be punishable by death. All right? Now, the thing is that in terms of objectivism is a philosophy of reason and reality. It's a way essentially for people to live on Earth. It's similar. The story of Ayn Rand reflects also in some ways the story of Buddha, is that the Ayn Rand, like Buddha, essentially said to people, look, if you want to lead a good life, here's how you do it. Though Buddha's philosophy is much, in my opinion, is not very good. The semblances of meditation, I think, have some medical benefits to them on scientific tests, but nonetheless, but no, in terms of objectivism, it shows people, it demonstrates to people how to, acquire knowledge, how to think, and it gives a vision of a free society for people to subscribe to.
I want to point out something that you said earlier about Hitler being a Catholic, okay? It may very well be true that Hitler was a Catholic, but he was a very bad Catholic. He was very bad at it. He sucked at it, okay? And, yes, he was into, the occult and what have you. And but he was also into eugenics as well.
Yeah.
Okay? He was into that. I mean, we're talking about a man who was a madman, who slaughtered 6 million Jews.
Yeah.
Stalin.
He was just
20 million Russians.
Yeah, Hitler was just a puppet, really. Okay.
Okay.
He was a tool.
Well, I mean, to the gentleman who said that Hitler is a puppet, Hitler was just a puppet. He has a right to his opinion. I can only go based on what is part of historical record. And the thing is that in terms of Hitler, not being a very good Catholic, well, he did have the sanctioning of the Catholic Church of Germany. Many of the members of the Catholic Church, including the hierarchy, the priesthood, and even the hierarchy, the cardinals and bishops, were members of the party.
And the Vatican was wrong for sanctioning that.
Yep. And I think I don't know what kind of moves they made, but there was. I think even at some point the Vatican had accepted what Hitler had done, though I think it may have turned a blind eye for some time. So.
There are differences. There are differences.
Go ahead.
There are conflicting views historically and conflicting interpretations of the treatment of the relationship between the Nazis and the Catholic Church. But one thing to keep in mind is that it's not uncommon for totalitarian or authoritarian governments to co-opt the church. I mean, there's official churches in China today that I believe that tend to follow the party line. There's official churches, and we have a problem with politicized churches in America.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Well, the thing is, though, it makes... Yeah, go ahead. Did someone else have another question?
I was just going to say, somebody from Central Arkansas has been waiting patiently for a little while. I hate to leave them on. Who's this from Central Arkansas?
Me?
Yeah. You call. Who's this?
My name's Caleb. I'm a friend of Mark's, and he told me to call in and shit. Are you guys there?
No, you're okay. Did you have a question for Mike?
No, I didn't. I wasn't expecting to. I was just listening. But
okay.
It was a really petty point that I was thinking of. I texted Mark and he said call in, but it was about the man that's talking about all the religions, and he mentioned that atheism wasn't a religion, and I've never been atheist, but I kind of figure that any group of people that all believe the same thing is classified as a religion. That's kind of the definition of a religion. I'm glad
you said that. I mean, there is militant atheism, like Bill Maher and Sam Harris would actually under that.
Yeah, just like there's militant Christians, just like there's militant Muslims, just like there's militant. I mean, there are people that are militant, right? That doesn't necessarily mean
4% of the world are sociopaths. So I mean, there's your militants right there.
Right.
Well, the only thing is, gentlemen.
Unfortunately, they're the ones really. unfortunately, they're the ones ruling the world right now, right?
Well,
at least
gentlemen, if I could just interject, if I could just interject, gentlemen, I don't think I have seen a news report that shows that of an atheist who has conducted a suicide bombing, be it of a military base, let alone even or even vandalized or tried to kill people who work for an abortion clinic.
Well, just give it a little bit more time.
But we do have Kim Jong-un, who is a very well-known atheist leader who murders people on a regular basis, or Kim Jong-il, who just died, who did the same thing, or a number of communist atheist dictators across the world who regularly commit pogroms of murder and oppression and subjugation all across the world. So you do have atheists that are committing these acts.
But again, communism is also a faith-based system because it relies on the morality of self-sacrifice, altruism. That the individual is to be sacrificed to the state, the same way that the church, that religion calls for the sacrifice of man to the greater glory of God.
In many ways, though, I would suggest, and I just want to say parenthetically, first of all, if you think Ron Paul is an anti-Semite, then you're beneath contempt. If that's your point of view, okay.
Ron Paul, look, it speaks to Ron Paul's character if he refuses to condemn. He says that he distances himself from his newsletters that had a lot of awful things they said about blacks, Jews, and gays in it, and then he denies ever knowing about it, but yet Reason Magazine caught him making statements that he did. So
he never said he knew. If you look at he never said he knew about what the awful filth that was in there. This has been litigated several times. There's been several explanations. I've worked with Ron Paul for almost 20 years. I can tell you he's the furthest thing from a racist or an anti-Semite that you could ever find.
But why did he sign off on them? There was a Washington Post report that said, yes, he did. One of the staff members, it was reported in the Washington Post, came forward and signed off on all of those.
An unnamed source said that, and I don't want to name who it is because I don't want to say, but I have theories on who it is. And
Norman,
wait a second. Hold on.
I got to get in here. I've got to say this because you're engaging, Mike, in the same type of behavior right now that you earlier on in the show accused people that are called conspiracy theorists of doing. So you are really behaving exactly what behavior you condemned.
No, because the reason why is that I have evidence that proves my assertions. Conspiracy theories are essentially
you don't have
the argument.
Please allow me
to make the distinction, sir. Please allow me to make the distinction.
Yeah.
Conspiracy theories are trying to apply the argument from design to world events. Very similar to creationism.
Common sense, right?
So that's the difference. I do rely on at least my facts and try to get at least a semblance of evidence before I open my mouth about stuff like this.
Well, I haven't heard any evidence concerning Ron Paul. Show us your
I
evidence.
just named the Washington Post article. So
that's not.
I know that Washington Post article, and I know that neither of the articles or Reason Magazine, or neither the Washington Post article or the Reason Magazine article prove what you say it what you claim it proved. But I agree with that, and I needed to just make that point, and but my question though was because you say you're an objectivist,
yes.
And you say that you are and that you opposed cultish behavior. I've always wanted to ask an objectivist this: how do you respond to the charge leveled by some people, even some prominent libertarians such as Murray Rothbard, that Rand herself at the time ran what was essentially a cult of personality? Which is not to say, by the way, that not all objectivists are cultists, because there are various objectivists. I have good friends who are objectivists who would strongly disagree with your comments about Ron Paul, for example, because they're big supporters of Ron Paul. I have friends who are objectivists who are strong supporters of Rand Paul, and I have friends who are objectivists who don't like either of them for various reasons, including that they are borderline anarcho-capitalist and don't support any political figure.
Well, to answer your question, no, I do not think that Rand ran a cult, because in objectivism, that falls flat on its face. That's easily debunked, because objectivism is a philosophy of individualism, and individuals have free will. Rand, to the best of my knowledge, never really tried to make it a point to control anyone's thought on certain issues. I think it's more like that Murray Rothbard was not telling the truth when he said things like that, as a way of him, as a way for him to try to, maybe maintain market share. I don't think he was. I don't think he was telling the truth.
Well, it is a fact. It's documented fact by several people, though, that the Rand circle in the 50s and 60s, among other things, they talked about how, first of all, Rand's personal preferences, such as preferring Mickey Spillane to one of the great Russian leaders, became matters of dogma. Secondly, they conducted trials and purges, just like a Soviet cell, and this doesn't just come from Murray. It comes from, I believe there are other people that you can writers, some of whom I think may be quite sympathetic to Rand, or at least were at one point. I've never read Nathaniel Brandon's book on his relationship.
Look,
with Rand, but I did read Barbara Brandon's book, and Barbara Brandon was very sympathetic to Ayn Rand in the end. That book is the Passion of Ayn Rand, I think it's called. It's a very interesting book if it's still in print, and anyone who wants to learn biographical information about Rand and her influence on the libertarian movement, I would recommend that. But she does deal a little bit with the cultish nature of the Rand Rand circle.
Allow me to give a little background about Barbara. Barbara Brandon, before she died, openly stated that she and Rand had reconciled. I think it was about a year or two before she passed away. And I've come to understand through the gentleman who did the research for The Passion of Ayn Rand is that they did not speak after their meeting when Barbara flew from New York or to California or California to New York to meet Rand, because apparently Barbara had disclosed to her that she was thinking about writing a biography about her, and apparently Ayn Rand did not approve. And so, as a result of that, after Ayn Rand passed away, then Barbara published her book. I think what is suspect about Barbara Brandon, and one of the reasons I no longer have any more respect for her, is if you watch the movie that is based on that book, it makes Rand to be out like a cult leader, and in fact, that was not the case at all. There's the Objectivist Academic Center, where there's a large, about 2 or 3 pages worth of articles written by Jim Perrin that refutes all that, and also tells quite an interesting perspective, I believe, also based on fact, about Murray Rothbard.
Okay, let me interject here for a second here. Okay, since everybody's been, yelling and screaming at each other at some point. But I just want to point out, which happens all the time on this show. But anyway, I just want to point out something here. Ayn Rand did say, and I do recall an essay she wrote many years ago, in which she supported big business, in which she was very much not just supportive of big business, but it seemed to imply that she was supporting government handouts for big business along those lines. And, what I find very distasteful about Ayn Rand, even though I give her a lot of credit for her influence and helpful development of the libertarian movement, as it is, the modern movement as it stands today, she does, she did throw in her support for big business in an essay she wrote a long time ago. Even Sheldon Richman, probably one of the biggest writers in the movement, actually quoted a portion of her essay on that in one of his writings, which got published in the Future of Freedom Foundation. So this whole notion that Rand wasn't a cult of personality or actually had some sort of a cult following is nothing but unadulterated bullshit on its heels. Isn't that right, Norm? I mean, but
if I could interject.
I was going to ask you, Will. Go ahead. I want your take on what Mike said tonight.
I would compare Rand to the current Molinites, the cult of Molyneux that you see, where you have this person who starts out as one thing. Because really, honestly, I'm not a big fan of Molyneux, but Molyneux did start out basically as a person who was just sharing his philosophy online. And then it became this cult-like following. And that kind of changed Molyneux himself. And he started advocating for things that he never would have advocated 4 or 5 years ago when that cult-like following began, and I honestly believe, by some of the things that he says, he's comparing himself to Aristotle. He's like, there's not been another philosopher on his level since Aristotle, Voltaire and Ibn Rushd and John Locke, none of those people even really existed before, and that whole thing corrupted what they started out in their aim of. Like their original message was one thing, and then as that cult developed around them, but I don't honestly believe that either personality wanted this cult to be developed around them. But when it happened, it kind of went to their head, and that corrupted everything that they stood for in the end. Like then you have Rand advocating for state theft from citizens in order to transfer that money to their business cronies, and you have Molyneux using the state to shut down people for using a picture of it. And both of these things are outside of the realms of what they normally would have seen in the beginning of their work as acceptable.
And that is probably, a very, very important point. I think that, a lot of these people did not intend for these things to develop, but unfortunately, like anything else in any political movement, it does happen. It really fosters into that environment and within that realm, that sphere.
Could I interject? Could I interject for a moment? With regards to the early development of her writings, of Rand's writings, and comparing them to Molyneux, look, when it comes to people like Sheldon Richman, not just Sheldon Richman, but any author may end up taking a quote from what a particular person says and saying it out of context. Now, I've also asked a number of questions and tried to get information about Stefan Molyneux. My biggest hang-up with Molyneux is the fact that he's a rationalist, and he's more of a rationalist, where he puts ideas above reality. But that being said, there are some things that he has done that are pretty good. He did a very good video, for example, explaining the skeptic side of global warming. And there are some other things that he's done as well that haven't been too bad. But that's just a philosophical disagreement. He's doing what he's doing. I don't get the semblance, though. Investigating Molyneux and his Free Domain Radio as being a cult at all. Even he's doing. It does not seem like that he is pressuring these people to break away from their parents. It's just that the parents have just been really heavily handed with the kids, and to the point where at least near abusive. So it sounds as if he's giving these kids the opportunity to really break away from their parents, where the parents may deserve it. Again, that's just only on the surface, though.
May I interject? Because Mike, I agree with what you're saying. You're right on point, and Go ahead. I'm sorry. I had a point.
Yeah,
and I
that's
just
all right. The thing with Molyneux, I mean, again, it's just a philosophical disagreement. But again, I can only go based on what I've seen. But we should not do anything to break up families. Try to resolve it first. And because your family is your family. Even though you may be an individualist, your family will always love you. Will always be there for you. At least a true family will. So, but nonetheless, when it comes to Molyneux, and Rand, I don't think the Molyneux's Freedom in Radio is a cult, and Objectivism certainly is not a cult. I mean, there are certain things about a belief system that can be, and I'm told that there were some groups in the early days that did practice that, like you could not associate with another group, so you had to sign a contract stating you would not do that, and also subscribe to certain literature. Well, that's all gone away. So.
You were going to say, Norm, you had a point to make.
Well, I'm not that familiar with Molyneux's work to really comment. I think that if you read Rothbard's monograph on on Ayn Rand, I think that it is pretty his analysis of it is pretty spot on. Now we should say, let's be fair that that doesn't necessarily mean that all objectivists are, especially now that it's 32 years since Ayn Rand passed away, and that the period on which that she was criticized for exercising cult leader-like behavior over her followers was a brief period of time from after she made a big splash with the publication of Atlas Shrugged till the late 60s when she broke with Nathaniel Branden. But I don't think we should say that doesn't mean that there's not value to be found in her writings. Ron Paul, who is a Christian and is a true Christian, which is why again I find the accusations of anti-Semitism and racism that continue to be leveled against him because of some nonsense that some nitwit who, for reasons that escape me, wrote in a newsletter, but he regularly acknowledges Rand's positive influence on the liberty movement and regularly acknowledges her fine role in bringing people to liberty and all the work that she did in promoting Austrian. There were a lot of people in the 50s and 60s who found Mises and the Austrians because they read Atlas Shrugged or The Fountainhead. They because of that they got interested in learning more about Ayn Rand's ideas, and her institute promoted Austrianism. Remember, even Alan Greenspan spoke like a Misesian back when he was associated with Ayn Rand. And certainly he was better off hanging out with Rand than he was when he ended up hanging out with Nixon.
I can just interject. Rand, as it turns out, in the early days when Ludwig von Mises was a visiting professor at NYU, Ayn Rand and Mises were friends because there were a lot of similarities. There were a lot of things that she found in Mises's writings and lectures that she very much agreed with. So, yeah, there is a close association or some sort of, I don't know if necessarily similarities, but there is at least a lot of common ground between the Austrian school and Objectivism. What only they differ on, of course, is the morality. Because Objectivism is strong on the whether a person will act in their own rational self-interest, and there is morality involved in their decisions. Austrians don't tend not to delve into those kinds of questions. It's more, they're more. I think it's more along the line of the subjective theory of value. That people just make choices with very little to no thought involved. But, again, that's not being facetious. I'm just, at least based on my general understanding of it.
Okay. But I just want to point out that I share my outrage with you, Norm, when you were talking about the accusations against Ron Paul being anti-Semitic and racist, considering that he did not write a single word in those newsletters. And, you know, there were some people there was one individual who was identified, the name escapes me for the moment, who actually was responsible for it, and for writing one of the letters. And even that aside, you know, that entire newsletter, the controversy that was brought up in 2008 and 2012 was nothing but a distraction away from the real issues that Ron's campaigns in 2008 and 2012 were all about. But that's a total argument to be made on another day.
Well, it isn't just Ron Paul's newsletters. Also, I would point out too that he's also condemned Israel for its activities in the Gaza Strip.
As he should.
No, he should not, because Hamas is an organization that was started by the Muslim Brotherhood out of Egypt.
The Mossad,
wanting to kill the Jews and eliminate the state of Israel.
The Mossad's hands are in on that too, my friend. The Mossad, okay? So
no, they were
get
not.
Off your Israel bandwagon because
wait,
you're dead wrong. You're dead in order tonight.
He takes an even-handed view, and he has repeatedly said that Israel is an independent sovereign nation. And that his main objection to Israel is our relationship with it. The fact that it receives billions of dollars in aid from America. The fact that yes, our foreign policy is tilted in a way that is at least perceived in the Arab world as discriminatory against the Palestinians.
Yeah. The United States is a terrorist nation who supports other terrorist nations and also supports terrorists, creates terrorists.
Okay. Are you aware that some of the members of Israel's parliament are also Arab descent and Christian? Are you also aware that Supreme Court justices are also Arab descent too in Israel?
I wouldn't doubt it.
Okay,
I wouldn't doubt it at all.
But how many? Do you know any Jews that live in the Gaza Strip? How about Christians? You see what's been happening to them?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, they are routinely persecuted. There are no Jews that live there. Okay. Humanitarian workers are scared to death. They will not go into the Gaza Strip because of the atmosphere that Hamas has created, literally making the Gaza Strip into a haven for terrorism. And there are numerous Muslim groups that go around there that will essentially come up to people who are not Muslims to say convert or die. And if you don't convert, they will kill you.
I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to disagree with anything that you said. I will ask you one question though, which is why should the United States government send foreign aid to any country overseas? B, wouldn't Israel benefit if the United States stopped subsidizing not just the Israeli military, but as part of that, also stopped giving foreign aid to other countries in the Middle East, and stop trying to be a global empire.
All right, allow me to put that in context. Allow me to put that in context. The actual aid to Israel, while I don't disagree of eliminating the direct foreign aid in terms of subsidies, direct foreign aid to Israel has gone down drastically, but what we've done is, and I think this is actually a better arrangement, is actually open trade with Israel. We've lowered tariffs with them, and Israel has also responded.
That's wonderful. We should be doing more of that. We should have more trade and cultural exchange with Israel.
Right, but
that's magnificent. I mean,
right.
Both countries can benefit from that, and that way the United States and Israel, by that relationship, we can serve as an example to the rest of the world as to what happens when you get your act together and you do a little capitalism.
Right. Well, and Netanyahu has been the one that's liberalized a lot of its markets and privatized a number of state-run industries. But the thing is to remember why the United States support countries like Israel is because essentially the United States is a westernized country, and we should support countries that reflect our values. In the case of Israel, it is involved in essentially a fight for its fight for its survival. Most of the wars that Israel has fought have been defensive, and it has been in fact its Muslim neighbors that have initiated the wars against Israel, not the other way around.
That's a ball-faced lie. That's a ball-faced lie.
I have plenty of evidence to prove my assertion.
There's been more than one ball-faced lie.
Hold on, everybody. Hold on. I just want to interject here. First of all, not Vietnam, not the first Gulf War. What happened because we got involved in the first Gulf War because we were pals with Saddam Hussein. That is a very well-known truth because you had Dick Cheney and John Bolton and their allies going over to Iraq, and they shook hands. Remember the infamous photo where one of our officials shook hands with Saddam Hussein at that time, and he was our ally, and that's when we turned on him? How about the fact that we actually provided funding and training for ISIS, okay, which we should never have done in the first place. If ISIS is a terrorist organization, and mind you, it's behaving like a terrorist organization, which a lot of the hawks are right about. In that context, then what the hell were we doing by training and funding their people to overthrow the Assad regime? What were we doing?
It's
okay. Allow me to respond. Please allow me to respond. Okay, sorry.
We've heard the pro-Israel rant for 5 minutes. Give it a second. What two countries? I mean, it's odd that you ask. What were we doing sending money to the Muslim Brotherhood last year? What were we doing? Congress voting in favor of it, by the way, sending money and weapons to Syrian rebels.
Exactly.
What two countries were spending the most effort and money lobbying the U.S. Congress to make sure that the money and weapons went to the Muslim Brotherhood, that the money, weapons, and training went to the Syrian rebels? What country has been offering intel as well as air support to Al-Qaeda rebels on the ground in Syria? It's not.
Thank you for proving my conspiracy theory.
It's not Saudi Arabia. It's not Pakistan. It's the State of Israel. The State of Israel has been caught assisting Al-Qaeda rebels on the ground in Syria.
That's correct.
Parts in Assad territory as Al-Qaeda rebels move in on the ground, while their government and AIPAC lobby the United States Congress and send threatening letters that are read into the congressional record saying you will vote to send money to the Muslim Brotherhood. You will vote to send money to Al-Qaeda because Israel and AIPAC demand that you do. And if you don't, enjoy being unemployed in 2014.
And not to mention, it strengthens the military-industrial complex because we've got a lot of defense contractors who depend on that.
Mike needs to have a chance to
support the defense industry in perpetuity because even if America is in time of peace, we will be sending billions of dollars of weapons to Israel or billions of dollars to Israel to buy weapons with. And no, Mike, those billions of dollars haven't gone down. Under George W. Bush, we sent $2.64 billion annually to Israel. And underneath of Obama, we send $3.41 billion to Israel
so what? My answer to that is so what? So what?
Going up $1 billion. No, you specifically
in case you haven't noticed,
it's gone down greatly. That was what you said.
In case you haven't...
Okay.
In case you haven't noticed, the country's broke. That's so what? So we're borrowing money from China to finance an internationalist foreign
let
policy
me ask
and a
you
large
something.
welfare state, and nothing should be off the table when we talk about cutting it. Period.
Can I ask you something? Can I ask you something?
Sure.
Okay.
Are any of you familiar with the history of the Ba'ath movement?
Yes.
Okay. What do you know about the Ba'ath movement?
I'm going to let you tell me because I think you're a lot more educated than I am. You're a lot more educated than I am. Yeah.
The Ba'ath movement was a movement that was started by this guy by the name of I believe his name was Michel Afrouk. All right. He was a French citizen of Syrian descent. And back around the time when Nazism was all the rage in Europe, he came up with this idea of starting a movement that would unite the Middle East under a fascist banner. The Ba'ath movement. Ba'ath is Arabic for renewal. Ba'ath movement was a fascist movement patterned after the Nazi Party, the very party that controlled Iraq for many years and also still controls Syria, which the Assads belong to. Okay, that is the kind of element that we are fighting against, and that we should support Israel against as well.
Let me respond. That's the kind of element that we have created. Do you understand that?
No, it's not. That is we have no hand in that.
You make a real leap there into saying that somehow that it's legitimate to take money from American citizens to use it for a purpose to send it to any foreign government. Now I would encourage trade and good relationships.
And I would counter that by asking, so in other words, because of what might have been mistakes, and yes, I do admit it was a mistake to support Saddam Hussein. I do admit it was a mistake to give arms to the Syrian rebels. I also think it was a mistake hold on, let me make my point, please. Please allow me to make my point. Please allow me to make my point. Please allow me to make my point. It was also a mistake for us to try to rebuild Iraq and Afghanistan after we had thrown out the Taliban and also Saddam Hussein, okay? But that being said, so therefore, does that remove the United States from having any kind of semblance of moral ability to defend itself when it acts in its best interest, even though it may not be the best decision?
No, it doesn't. To launch defense, but I would, if I can, just on your history of the Middle East and the Ba'athist movement. Keep in mind that Saddam Hussein and Bashir al, whatever the name of the guy in Syria is, I mean, they're thugs, they're brutal, they're dictators, they're socialists. Saddam Hussein is, I'm pretty sure, is rotting in hell, and I know you disagree with that. With that. If
there was hell, he deserves to rot in it. But go ahead.
Right. Okay. That's a good way of putting it. But it is a fact that the Ba'athists, because they are a secular dictatorship, were opposed to radical Islam, and the only thing that they ever united on was opposing United States intervention in the MiddleAst.
Now, wait.
And even Richard Pearl, by the way, admitted after 9/11 that American troops on Saudi Arabian soil was a provocation.
Okay, well, what would you say? Well, since our troops are now out of Saudi Arabia, they still attack us.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
And the same thing with our embassy in Lebanon. Our embassy in Lebanon was bombed by a terrorist operation financed by Iran. And now
are you referring to the Benghazi attack?
No, the 1983 Lebanese U.S. embassy attack, where the embassy was bombed.
Oh, Lebanon. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you said Libya.
Yeah, we pulled out. Reagan pulled our troops out. Even just like the way we pulled out of that, we closed our base in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, we're still attacked. They still attack us.
There's an active drone base in Saudi Arabia that's used to drop bombs on weddings in Yemen right now.
However,
really, what about when they get it right? What about when they actually kill terrorists?
Are you at all concerned with the recorded killing of innocents in the drone attack?
No, I do not. I do not speak highly, nor do I like the deaths of innocents. But ultimately, the deaths of innocents are laid at the feet. They are laid at the feet of people like Saddam Hussein and also Osama bin Laden, who are attacking the United States. We have a right to defend ourselves. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with...
But Saddam Hussein was never a threat to the United States.
There is plenty of evidence that states that he was. Look at the recent WMD that they had uncovered. That was kept hush-hush for about 10 years. He did. He was a threat. He also supported terrorism, too.
let me interject here because I've been spending about 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes trying to interject here.
Okay.
Okay. Jim is on the line here, my co-host. He is my co-host, my partner in crime, Jim Landreth Jr. Jim, you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Jim, your thoughts on what Mike had to say in the last few minutes you heard. I tried to get you on, but it's hard to shut people up. So go ahead. Your thoughts on what?
Yeah,
Mike,
from what I hear, blowback is an excuse to create more blowback, and then we create more blowback and then call ourselves victims. That's pretty much a summarization. It's bullshit. We've been screwing up since 1958.
I love you, Jim.
Since 1958. We're not going to get it right in 2014. We're not going to get it right in 2015. We've got multiple decades upon decades of screwing this up. This is not going to be the year that we luck out. It isn't.
So we can never get anything right.
We're never going to get it right.
Never going to get it right. Ever.
We're not. No.
Okay.
You know why? Because we don't
why?
own the government. That's because we don't own the Middle East. We don't own it. It's not our property. It is.
Okay.
Iraq was never intended to be the 51st state of the fucking United States, Mike.
It's all about resource exploitation.
It was never intended to be that. Will, you wanted to throw in your comments more so on his charges of Muslims, and I think you did to a certain extent tonight. But you have any other further comments? Because I know you had an interesting time debunking everything.
Can I just say that Mike is
I'm sorry, Will. I meant Will.
No, I'm talking about Mike, though. I said that Mike's one tough dude, man. He's hanging in there. I love him.
He is.
Yeah.
Will, I understand that you had a very interesting discussion with Mike Renzulli on one of the Muslim discussion forums, and he took off, and he... okay, go ahead. You have something to say to Mike? He's all yours.
Howdy, Mike. How you been?
Hello.
You know me.
Go ahead and make your point, please.
You know me. I was saying hello. How are you?
I've said hello back. I'm doing well. Thank you. So go ahead and make your point, please.
Very good. Very good. Well, no, you said that there were, there's no American military presence in Saudi Arabia, and I pointed out there's actually an active drone base in Saudi Arabia that actively kills civilians, across the Middle East. And of course, that would be, if China had a base in Texas or in Mexico, that was often used to bomb civilians here in the States, that would be something that you and I would object to. And then your rationalization was, well, what about when they get it right? And, when it's funny that you make that comment because, quote unquote, getting it right, according to the current definition, is killing a male over the age of 12. I mean, that's all you have to do to be qualified by our new, rules of engagement with drone weapons to be considered a possible threat is to be a male over the age of 12. So,
right. Is it also not true that children are being recruited by Islamists to conduct terrorism? In other words, bombing and even shooting up soldiers. Is that true?
I haven't seen personally any child.
It happened in Vietnam.
Even immediate.
It happened in Vietnam. The communists did the same thing with the children in Vietnam. My mom's foster brother was in charge. Hold on. My mom's foster brother was in charge of the laundry area in the base where he was stationed at, and the little kids, Vietnamese kids, one time decided to come in and throw grenades at them.
And we have no business.
How does that have to do with the topic of conversation?
Plus, also, I would point out that the Will Collins perspective is biased because it sounds as if he. I would also point out that Will Colley's perspective sounds like he's biased because it sounds as if that it is a drone operation specifically geared to kill innocent civilians, which that is not the case, and that is a loaded, fairly biased
They do it all the time, and they haven't stopped doing it. They don't really give a shit.
I didn't state that it was a base that was specifically for killing civilians. I stated that the current statistics are that for every one terrorist that we kill 50 civilians, and the only thing that you have to do to be able to be qualified to be that one terrorist is to be a male over the age of 12, which means
but again, that goes back to my original point. That goes back to my original point that obviously the kids are being recruited. Okay? This is wartime, and the wartime, your ethics, the codes of ethics are completely different.
God's law is not suspended because somebody decides they want to go and exploit the resources in another country. You can't just...
Okay. So we're exploited the resources of Iraq. Are you aware that we also charged Japan for the same, for the occupation of their country? You think that we did the same thing in Iraq?
I don't know what to say to you, Mike. I don't know what to say to you.
And we killed them, and then we charge them for killing them. That justifies and rationalizes it somehow?
The Japanese were the ones. The Japanese were the ones who attacked us first. Just like Iraq was the one that attacked us.
Iraq never attacked us.
Yes, they did.
No, when did they attack the United States?
Saddam Hussein. There is plenty of evidence that proves that Saddam Hussein was supporting terrorism against the United States and had chemical weapons.
What evidence? What evidence? What evidence is there?
What evidence? What evidence?
Yeah.
Well, if I show it to you, will you believe me?
Show it.
Okay, I'll be more than happy to. I'll send the evidence to Tom. There is a paper trail that establishes. Well, for example, there was a paper trail that established that Saddam Hussein was sending checks to the families of suicide bombers.
Yeah.
And the bombers in the United States
against Israel, and I believe even targeting American targets in the United States. The regime also housed a well-known bomb maker who had also trained other terrorist groups to make bombs as well.
Well, you know what? Israel was totally correct in 1981 to take out Saddam Hussein's nuclear facility. They would have been totally correct because I know of that case, and I said in the United States, not in Israel, but Israel would have been completely correct to bomb Saddam Hussein and take him out at any time in the 25 or how many years between 81 and the United States removal of Baghdad because he was a threat. Israel might be justified right now in another bombing operation in Iran if they could do it. If they sincerely, I mean, I support Israel's right to defend itself. I believe that you were correct that the Israel Middle East conflicts, Israel Arab conflicts from 47.
Are you people taking fucking crazy pills?
No,
I'm bombing a country that hasn't bombed you self-defense.
Because you have a I don't believe I'm because you have a I'm talking about a situation where I believe he was correct.
Let's do it one at a time. Hey, stop for just a minute. One at a time. You go. I believe that's Will. You go, and then Norm, you can respond.
What rational definition of self-defense states that I don't like the fact that you have a gun in your house, so that means I could come burn your house down? I mean, it's literally like saying one of these gun grabbers in the U.S. can say that they don't like the fact that I've got a rifle, that I have a pistol. It makes them feel threatened. They feel scared because of the fact that I've got a gun in their neighborhood and it could hurt somebody. So that means they have to run my house down in self-defense or shoot a member of my family. Because the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life.
Let me respond to that because the point I was making was Israel is a sovereign nation who has there's a history of its neighbors invading them militarily. That doesn't justify everything that Israel has done vis-a-vis the Palestinians, the settlements, etc. But what it does mean is that as a sovereign nation, Israel has the right of every sovereign nation to act in the defense of its people. And if you have a government that is funding terrorist attacks against the citizens of a sovereign nation, it is respected that sovereign nation has the right to respond militarily, just like we were correct, I believe, to respond after the September 11th attacks. I believe that Israel is correct and has the right to respond militarily against attacks on Israeli citizens. I don't like paying for it. I don't think it's the United States' job to fund any other government's military in the world. That doesn't mean that I don't respect the rights of those countries to defend themselves. And I do respect the right, and I do recognize that Israel is culturally and economically closer to what we recognize as a Western country with Western values than any other nation in the Middle East. To say that isn't saying that I agree that we should be spending a lot of money or that supporting Israel, because I oppose all foreign aid.
That's right.
Yes.
Now, I'm
saying though that and again, I'm not saying that everything that Israel does is correct, and I'm not saying that countries have the right, that I believe in preemptive war, because I don't. I'm saying if you see a pattern of what is actual aggression attacks, not threatened attacks, not we think this guy sometime in the future is going to attack us, then you do have the right to respond militarily. Congressman Paul defended Israel's taking off of the...
Right, not the minority report bullshit that the statists really have been laboring under for so long. Let me point out several things here. It's amazing that a lot of the hawks who are screaming for terrorism are the same people who once screamed bloody murder when it came to communism, because we were told the bullshit lie that communism was going to spread throughout the entire globe. That never happened, okay? Vietnam was a mistake. I don't care what anybody says, Vietnam was a mistake. And so was the first Gulf War. So was Operation Desert Storm and Desert Shield, okay? Second point. You also have the IRA bombings that took place in Ireland that killed a number of British people in England, for fuck's sake, in the 1990s. Where were you people then when it came to the bombings coming from the Irish Republican Army under Sinn Féin? Okay?
They started back up this year, actually.
Yeah, they started back up this year, as a matter of fact. Where the hell have you people been on this issue? Oh, no, we have to be very silent about that, because that's their problem. But when it comes to terrorism, because, hey, we can't let a guy who seems to be riding a camel, gee, he must be an evil Muslim, so therefore he must be a jihadi, or perhaps part of the Mujahideen. Third, why weren't you guys calling for bloody murder when some of Israel's top government officials were killing innocent people too, who were also responsible for that? There have been a number of articles pointed out in antiwar.com over that situation. A number of them with alarming, damning evidence. We had seen time and time again that blowback has been a fucking failure, Mike. We installed the Shah of Iran in 1953. Remember the Iranian crisis of 79 when we deposed the Shah of Iran, when that entire situation went down? And look what happened. People were protesting. People were killed. There was way too much collateral damage. There's been collateral damage on so many other sides. It is fucking insane.
Collateral damage, my ass. These are dead children, murdered children, murdered women, and murdered men. That's what they are. They're not collateral damage.
I go back to my original point, which is the United States needs to go back to its the policy of the founders. And I just saw a quote from James Madison today on Facebook. I'm trying to remember it exactly, but it was that something like freedom and a war making or empire are ultimately incompatible. So the United States needs to decide: do we want an aggressive foreign policy that alienates the rest of large chunks of the world, or do we want to maintain a free society? And not to mention the fact that we're broke, and it is not just the welfare states bankrupting us, it is the warfare state. We just can't afford it. And how does anybody in the world benefit? Well, except for China, because they looks like they're poised to overtake us as the next major economic power. But that actually ought to be of more concern to us than some jackass in a cave.
Allow me to interject, please. Allow me to interject. Non-intervention. Look, even I would like to go back to the classical liberal order of the 19th century that stretched from the mid-19th century to probably the mid to early 1920s. However, though, non-intervention only works when you don't have countries that are hell-bent on attacking you and wanting to destroy you. When non-intervention worked only so well up until communism came along and it said, hi, here we are, we're going to collectivize the world, the international, we're going to collectivize the world. Hold on, let me make my point, please.
Do you know the definition of insanity?
Please allow me to make my point, and I'll use the Iranian coup as an example. The Iranian coup is a completely legitimate action. As it turns out, Mohammad Mossadegh was in fact was consorting with or was an ally of the USSR. With his election, and had he been able to solidify power, he would have made Iran into a satellite of the USSR and allowed the USSR to get more oil for its country. The United States had a right to reinstall the Shah, who was the legitimate ruler, because the Shah was bringing Westernization and capitalism to his country.
No, Mossadegh was democratically elected. Mossadegh was democratically elected. The Shah was not the rightful. And what right does the United States government, or any government for that matter, have to go into another country and install anyone?
Because there's no right to enslave. That's essentially what he wanted to do, was by turning Iran into a communist state, he was going to enslave the populace. He was going to collectivize the country.
Excuse me.
But that has nothing to do with the United States.
Okay, but how does the United States? Why does the United States then have the right to steal from me to go free people in other countries?
The largest slave
so you're saying that you prefer instead for other countries to set up dictatorships?
Yeah, the largest slave state in the world.
I'm saying that I prefer to live in a United States that's a limited constitutional republic that goes not abroad in search of monsters to destroy. I mean, you're ignoring you haven't addressed the question about blowback.
Right, because
at all tonight, it's been brought up several times. It's something that is a concept that does not come from libertarians. It actually comes from serious foreign policy scholars, including several analyses from the Central Intelligence Agency.
Such as Chalmers Johnson, of which I read his book, and he has a right to his opinion, but not to his own facts. You see, the proper function of a government is to protect individual rights.
The same goes for you, Mike.
It's not the proper function of a government to protect individual rights around the world, though. That's insane.
Okay, but the thing is, it is helping. In terms of Iran, England had asked for our help, and the CIA culminated and devised a plan to conduct a coup to kick out Mossadegh. A majority does not have the right to vote away the rights of a minority, and that's exactly what would have happened in Iran if Mossadegh was allowed to go through. He would have done what Castro did. He had just kept his communism in the closet until he came out and said, "Hi, I'm a communist. We're allied now with the USSR. Thank you. Have a nice day."
How about the people of those kinds of
the Shah got in and he started cracking down on civil liberties immediately. Yeah, he was a real improvement.
Wait, I didn't catch your question. What was that?
Oh, wow.
He was basically pointing out that the Shah was not exactly the example of a modern liberal small L Democrat small D ruler.
The Shah cared about his country. He was opening his country to westernization and capitalism. That's why we supported him. And the Shiite mullahs hated him because he was a buttress against their willingness to erect an Islamic state. Well, now that the Shah's gone, look what you've got.
Okay, let me point out something here. First of all, it is not our job to play God with every single nation on this planet. It is not our responsibility, nor should it be our responsibility. It is not our obligation and our moral duty to go around dictating to other governments and other societies how they should live and must live. If the people were being subjected to that kind of tyranny, why didn't they revolt? Those people could have revolted any time they wanted when they were given the opportunity to do so, Mike. And
well, it's kind of hard when your country, it's kind of hard when the regime has a monopoly on force to the point where the people can't take up arms to defend themselves. When the government has all the guns and the people are essentially repressed and the government controls the food supply and everything like that. It's a demoralization process they conduct to the populace to keep them in check. That's the reason why we have a right to kick out dictatorships like that. A dictatorship is not a legitimate form of government.
Well, charity begins at home, my friend.
There are some people. Okay, well, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a serious question. Let me ask you a serious question. What if because of Obamacare and the NSA wiretapping, the use of the IRS to crack down on Tea Party groups that dissent from the administration's agenda, would you say that it would be legitimate for a libertarian, say that there was a libertarian government somewhere in the world, pause to laugh for a minute, for them to come in and overthrow Obama on the grounds that he is violating people's rights
No.
with Obamacare and...
Oh, but
no.
It's okay if we do it.
You want to know why? Would you like to know why?
I do.
Would you like to know why? All right.
I do. I'm assuming that you're not.
America can do whatever it wants.
I'm assuming that you're not. I'm assuming that you're not an Obama supporter.
The height of arrogance.
You are correct in that assertion, but allow me to tell you why. The United States government is a government that is consistently erected, that has institutions that consistently uphold individual rights. It's based on that principle. That also includes being able to elect members of the opposition party to House of Congress to check the president, and also right now you have conservatives who make up the majority in the Supreme Court who can strike down many of the things that he does.
Down.
And vote the president out in 4 years as well.
That's okay. Thank you. That's a fair answer. Of course, we're not. Unfortunately,
because of Ebola, and that would make it legitimate.
Okay. Well, that's.
If Obama declared martial law because of Ebola, that would then make it legitimate.
I don't know. I don't think it will. I don't think it will have to come to that.
No, I'm saying if there's a point where the government declares martial law, would it be legitimate for another country to overthrow our government and put a government in place that we don't choose?
No.
Again, so we're back to your logic is that it's okay for us, but not okay for someone else to do it.
No, because, again, it goes back to my original point. All right, let's say hypothetically that Obama does declare martial law. You have plenty of public interest law firms that could take him to court, and the court could essentially order him to lift it.
The entire legal system is corrupt. How in the hell is that going to solve anything?
Under martial law, your answer to my initial question was very good, and I agree. I actually agree with it. I think, though, that you're not answering dealing with the hypothetical, because I think what the hypothetical assumes is that under a martial law circumstances, just as in the Soviet Union or Nazi Germany, there would not be access to the checks and balances of an independent legislature and judiciary would be suspended. If I'm wrong, please. Whoever initially asked the question, correct me on that.
Even I think Abraham Lincoln had declared martial law at one point too, but they were still able to bring cases against him. So it is not a zero-sum game.
Let's just locked up journalists that didn't agree with him and locked up politicians.
Well, again, Lincoln was not a saint. But I do admire the man for at least his convictions, and I think all in all, I think he deserves recognition for his stance on slavery and what he did. But
I just want to say I'm not advocating overthrowing of the United States government by violence or a foreign policy. It was just a hypothetical to try to flesh out some of these arguments.
This is the whole point, is that what makes up a legitimate government is one that protects the rights of the individual. And a society that makes it so that people have political and economic, as well as also political and economic freedom, is also the kind of society that we reflect, because our government is essentially like that.
No, it isn't. Our government is not like that. Our government made it once like that. Our government is not like that now. I mean, if you believe that, you're living in fairyland, my friend. Fairyland.
Okay. I hate to interject here, but it's time to wind things down. Thank you very much for joining us, Mike. I know it's been way over a half hour we got into this sort of thing. So
I had a feeling it might get that.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. Thank you all very much.
Have a good
Thank
I've
you.
been kind of tough on you, Mike. But I want to tell you something. I love you, brother. And
thank you very much.
I want you to know,
Mike.
I truly appreciate everything that you're doing.
Mike, I enjoyed it. You're a worthy debating partner.
Thank you.
I do have to say though, I was a little surprised at the end to hear an objectivist. I think I must have misunderstood you when you said that we have economic freedom today in this country because we can't even you literally can't even start your car or get out of bed anymore without being impacted by some stupid federal regulation these days.
Well, we do have economic freedom from the sense that is, that's the result of the institutions that our government is set up to erected to protect, which is political and economic freedom. It has been dragged down due to Bush and also Obama's policies of spending and also regulation. But I think if Reagan's election could be of any indication, we can get our groove back. And I think that things are pretty poor right now, but we can get our groove back. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, everybody.
I appreciate your optimism. I do share it.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. Have a good night, guys, and thanks again. Bye-bye.
I share his optimism as well, probably just from a different perspective.